Finally, please welcome, representing our wonderful host from FAO, Aslihan Arslan, economist in the Agrifood Economics and Policy Division. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I will definitely need this scale. Thank you very much for sticking with us for these 2 days, and it basically speaks to all your dedication and commitment to this cause. So I'm very happy to be here, and I want to start by warmly thanking the organizers and the huge team behind this amazing summit to bring us together, and amazing dedicated crowd in this room. What turned out to be a momentous and powerful moment for scaling TCA, I think. So before I speak to you with an FAO hat on, just a brief personal reflection, and then I'll move on to my FAO hat. So I realized I've been involved with the TCA since I started working in FAO, like before the 2023 report was launched. And then I realized now, especially over these 2 days, that I was a true cost accounter before even I had the words for it. Because my journey began like more than 2 decades ago when I was studying economics, but only when I started studying environmental economics and then learned about how we can value and measure externalities to make sure we make the invisible visible and measure what matters, then I started being like more interested in studying more. And through my PhD, I was exposed to the immense genetic diversity of maize, traditional maize varieties that we heard about yesterday. And I developed a way to measure the social capital and natural capital embedded in that traditional diversity in Mexico. And I was really happy to hear yesterday that True Cost Accounting is providing the language and the tools to devise policies in Mexico for their in-situ conservation through Francesca's intervention yesterday. Basically, the unifying language that True Cost Accounting allows us to bring the need and the importance of measuring all the 4 capitals to achieve sustainable food systems. And I think all of your dedicated efforts and actions so far makes this event more momentous so that we can actually, yes, Marcel said we are already in action. So let's basically use this to scale up. So let me put on my FAO hat now, just to touch upon 3 points to close this event. I would like to first highlight very briefly personal highlights from the summit that I took, great quotes, and then touch upon how TCA work will live on at FAO and how you can all contribute to be partners in this effort going forward. So very briefly, I had to select 3 personal highlights. It's not that there weren't any more, but my first highlight from yesterday was the zombie narratives, the need to change these zombie narratives, that the status quo is the most efficient way to do business, and we basically need to value, using TCA, all the capitals and communicate this in a way to flip those zombie narratives. And the other snippet of wisdom I took from yesterday's discussions was that the private investment can blaze a trail while public investment brings scale. So I think this is another powerful insight that we can all take from this event. And lastly, be pragmatic, not dogmatic, was mentioned this morning, and I think also another guiding principle that can take us going forward. And one minor thing, if I could mention, maybe low light instead of highlight, was that I would have liked to see more representation of the consumer groups, because as we all know consumers are the largest representative, largest stakeholders of global agri-food systems. I know it wasn't for the lack of trying on the part of organizers, but I'm sure going forward, bringing in the consumers would be very important to make sure that we can scale it, because that demands so much behavioral change that we need to invest in. So my second point, how the TCA work will live on, or maybe is already living on in FAO going forward. We've heard from Jen, and we know, like through your interactions leading up to this point, that there will be a TCA action plan that will be released in July. And that will be basically, I'm sure she'll tell us more about it, it will serve as a strategic roadmap so that all stakeholders in the global agri-food systems can be part of the widespread adoption of TCA and use it as a decision-making tool to achieve more sustainable, healthy, and fair agri-food systems globally. And it would be great to see that TCA action plan, maybe to organize actions in 2 like broad parallel streams, let's say, that we all need. One would be the immediate, like low-hanging fruits that we have heard a lot in this room. There's so much work going on, not just in the last 10 years, but even like much longer. We just need to bring in the TCA narrative and then inject that holistic and systemic view into those narratives, short-term immediate actions, and one longer-term actions that require narrative change and policy change at a higher level. In terms of how TCA will work in FAO going forward, I'd like to organize them around these two parallel tracks, let's say. On the more operational side, that can be also a bit more immediate and easy to do, let's say, easier. TCA can be used in FAO, and I know Andrea also mentioned a lot of colleagues are already using it to guide project design and project analysis. And it can also guide concrete policy actions that we know there are maybe easier to scale up, right? Including the public procurement decisions, highlighting the value of like true cost accounting in showing the value for farmers, for consumers, for future generations, not just today, but also in the future. Public procurement decisions and identifying value chain investments. We have heard from, for example, rice in Thailand, and FAO projects usually go through exercises to identify value chains to invest in sustainable agri-food transformation. So that's an easy way for us to use. And the success stories that we have heard of this morning, I'd like to say I've been working on FAO and UN for 15 years. The principles of true cost accounting are there, and they've been there for the last 15 years. Most of the projects I've seen on the ground have most of the principles. So we just need to make sure that, for example, Andhra Pradesh example keeps coming up, right? So what is it that it prevents us from scaling and then achieving that success of Andhra Pradesh that we just need to understand and inject in our ongoing project design and implementation? And what we need there to achieve that scale, I think, is a combination of efforts from farmers' organizations, private sector finance, as well as policymakers. So that brings me to the FAO's role in supporting governments to change their narratives in their sustainable agri-food systems transformation efforts. And that's the longer-term engagement and support that FAO provides. And Andrea has mentioned, like, the SOFA reports invited countries to think about using TCA in their agri-food systems transformation work, and they're already doing that. We have heard a lot from the Swiss example, which was a very successful example through this SOFA reports that we have been involved in. And then we have also heard about other initiatives from Brazil, Australia, and just recently, even just yesterday, from the Dutch Parliament in making these efforts to scale up TCA in their policymaking. And these are strong indicators of momentum in this journey that we're all here to further today and yesterday. Going to more regional role, Dimitri has been our regional champion in true cost accounting, and he did a great job highlighting FAO's comparative advantage in engaging with country governments and regional governments to embed the true cost accounting and the thinking of this holistic capitals approach within their agricultural and rural transformation policymaking. So FAO is going to continue doing those kinds of engagements, and we are going to be continuing to provide methodologies that can be implemented and tailored to country needs. And we need more Dimitris actually in other regions, that's for sure. And another way that FAO is already using true cost accounting is we're using the true cost accounting as part of our engagements with the UN Common Country Analysis frameworks with a couple of countries. Those are basically UNCCA are documents that inform countries so that they can come up with tailored solutions to achieve SDGs within their countries. So true cost accounting, thanks to FAO's intervention, is already being integrated in a couple of countries into this broader SDG 2030 framework in different countries. And last but not least, the second UN Food Systems Summit stocktake in Ethiopia in July 2025 will be another opportunity where FAO will play a role in increasing the visibility of true cost accounting towards achieving the SDGs. And of course, Marcel will be there as a champion of TCA, I'm sure, and many of you as well will be partnering with FAO in that effort, I'm sure. But let us go back to Andrea's point from the opening. Okay, we can do all this engagement that we want, but policymakers will use true cost accounting only if they see that as a solution to a problem that they already have, right? And FAO's bottom line is basically helping member states, member countries to achieve their food security and sustainability goals and commitments within their rural transformation frameworks. So if the use of true cost accounting implies even the slightest change, increase in healthy food or any food basket that's out there, that would be very difficult to sell. And Marcel mentioned this as well earlier. And in those situations, which will happen because we're not going to change the whole system all at once, it's very important, like the SOFA 2024 report mentioned, systems will need to be in place for nutrition-sensitive social safety nets or school feeding programs so that this transformation can happen one step at a time. And basically, FAO's role is here, like the ones that I've mentioned, but we can only support member countries to the extent that they see TCA as a solution. And there comes the third point, and this community's role in increasing the visibility of TCA, both on the ground, from the farmers' organizations, consumers, but also at the local regional or global governance structures. Because basically we have highlighted the difficulty in, I don't want to actually sound pessimistic, but it is hard to divide those, to bridge those divides, especially when the divides are spatial between faraway countries through global trade networks, temporal, the impacts that you don't even see, they might be in decades to come, and sectoral divides. And we need the local action that we have seen amazing examples here in the last 2 days to demonstrate that proof of concept, but also the high-level policy change to embed those lessons so that we can bring them at scale. They're both very essential. And through FAO's work with our member state governments so that we can help them achieve their sustainability and food security goals and commitments, the work of this TCA community of practice will be very important because I'm sure you guys will continue to increase the visibility of TCA and then how it can bring value for the agri-food systems as a whole. And when the governments have the conviction and the language actually to use these 4 capitals in their decision-making and national accounting, they can also incentivize private sector investment into this endeavor. And a good example that we highlighted in the SOFA was the European Union's corporate social sustainability due diligence that mandates big companies, starting with the big companies, right, because you don't want to alienate SMEs at the onset, to implement robust due diligence processes to identify, prevent, and mitigate adverse impacts on human rights and the environment throughout their operations and supply chains globally. So this is one way of starting to bridge those gaps, both spatially and temporally, between stakeholders of today and tomorrow. The TCA action plan that's going to be released in July will be an important step in contributing progress towards this kind of success stories. And through all the actions and projects that you have brought here to the table and we told us about over these last 2 days. Just briefly, basically facilitating collective action. The Andhra Pradesh example comes to mind again, is one of the important actions that is brought by this community to this table. And aligning forces and increasing consumer and public awareness, Claire's example, and many others out there that are showing us like real progress is already being observed on the ground. Improving data and research, like Carlo's example, and I know many others that are out there, trying to bring proper rigorous evidence in measuring the true cost of food and then trying to identify ways to incorporate it in our policies. When I talk about data and governance, of course, harmonization of tools as well as training of the trainers is an important component of that as well. Coming to financial structures to facilitate transformative action, which is one of the hardest, maybe longer term interventions that are needed, because that needs to go beyond borders and beyond these divides that I've just mentioned. Last but not least, communication and advocacy. And Salman has mentioned the importance of highlighting the benefits, the hidden benefits. The narrative cannot be only about the hidden costs. And that would be an important also principle to take forward. Going back to one of the highlights, and Andrea also mentioned about the importance of realism in this, what can be actually really achieved. We need to be realistic. So let us be pragmatic, not dogmatic, in keeping this momentum. And maybe one day, I don't see Alexander, is he still here? Maybe one day, as he envisioned, global leaders will gather in this very room to make sure that we can measure the correct things to steer the agri-food systems globally towards sustainability and inclusion. With that, I'd like to thank again the organizers very warmly and all of you participants to bringing your dedication and enthusiasm to this summit. And I think this summit definitely promises an amazing turning point to scale TCA. We look forward to working more on this. Thanks.